Hello and welcome to Scale Car Garage. Well, managed to have another chat with another really interesting slot car enthusiast. His name is Mark Huber, and Mark, first of all, his profession took him all over the world, and he started right at the very beginning of the slot car hobby with a wonderful story of how he got his first slot car set. And I don't want to give everything away, but I really hope you enjoy our chat, because I really enjoyed having a chat with him. And we did our this chat actually in the evening, so we had an appropriate beverages. Yeah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you enjoy my conversation with Mr. Mark Huber here on Scale Car Garage. Well, cool. Well, let's talk about the really important stuff like scale cars.
Sure.
All right, Mark. Well, first of all, thank you again for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy. It's a delight. I think I first met your acquaintance when one of my rabbis, mentors, as I searched for scale-accurate Grand Prix cars, said, there's this guy in Canada. He makes I think he's got a little Lotus 33 and a Ferrari 158 kit out there. And, you can find him at this email address and shoot him an email, and, he'll tell you what it costs. And sure enough, and there you go. And that was a long time ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
Happened to the Ferrari.
I'll get you another one. Don't worry.
I'll tell you. I do. Well, I'll tell you this. It's like if they ever started to put people's pictures next to terms for the hobby world, my picture should be next to the phrase "malignant kit bashing," because I just can't keep. I just get tons of stuff, and I build something, and then I take it apart and say, "I'll use that later." I found the Lotus 33 body, which I had never built. And that then I said, well, I think that's going to look good. I'm trying out new painting techniques. So I have for 12, 15 years always used Tamiya. How do you say it, John?
Tamiya is, and from what I understand from my Japanese friends, Tamiya is correct.
Yeah, ides, yeah. Anato wa Nihongo hanashimasu ka?
Oh boy, okay, I'm just gonna go home now.
Yeah, okay. Tamiya. Well, I've always used Tamiya superfine gray or superfine white, but after getting addicted to Wargamer and miniature videos, and these folks are just amazing painters, I said, I'm going to try some flat black primer. So I primed up your Lotus 33 in flat black the other day. I don't have it with me here, but that looks pretty sharp, So
now, do you still have all the bits? I mean, because I think there were inserts I think I shipped with it and some other stuff, or no? Oh, okay. Well,
but I don't have that. But I do have spare windscreens because I got those. And besides that, I make a lot of bits myself.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So, and but yeah, I mean, that's how I knew you. I mean, I realized you had customers and people saying, hey, I've heard about, you've got this kit. And you say, well, yeah, they're X. And you shipped it off to me. And I go, yeah, thank goodness. It's not a fat, pregnant, too high Lotus 33. Got it down to the right size. Good. Yeah, I want to talk about that later on, about scale accuracy, because without going, I could do a Lewis Black rant about scale accuracy, but and I may do that later on in the show. But I brought some examples.
Oh, I'd love to see them too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's how I met you. That's
Okay.
how I met you. And then, when I came back into the hobby, which is down the road of my long story.
I was going to say, no, yeah, start at the beginning.
So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah,
Okay,
when did you first start getting into it?
So, okay, I was born on the prairie. And I was.
You were, yeah.
Where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. And actually, the town I was born in, Oaks, North Dakota, was, I think, with all due respect to Garrison Keillor saying it was his town, and I think we were really the prototype for Lake Wobegon. The only difference between our little town and the mythical Lake Wobegon is that we didn't have a lake, and we had 2 Lutheran churches, not one. That's how Lutheran we were, And one of those Lutheran pastors was my father. So I'm in this little town. Okay, born in the 50s, I start first grade at the age of 5 in 1959. And this is a town with a main street that's 3 blocks long, and it's 1 square mile in size, 1 mile by 1 mile. It's a little town. Founded as a railroad town off of a railroad spur in the 1890s. Needless to say, we didn't have a hobby store. Heck, we didn't have a Ben Franklin. We didn't have a toy store. We didn't have a hobby store. We didn't have a Woolworths. We didn't have a Ben Franklin. What we did have was a Rexall little drugstore. And drugstores in America then is these small little drugstores. It wasn't yet the land of Walgreens and CVS. There were these small little, locally owned, but sort of a franchise store. They had to stock everything. So, you had, cosmetics, but there was a little corner. There was a little corner where there'd be models. And about the time I'm 5 years old or so, kindergarten age, as I'm wandering around, and I move away from the comic book section, and I go down and I see these model kits. And I just fall in love. I just look and go, oh my God, look at this. The box art.
Yeah.
About the box art knows how to get a boy to say, Mom, I need this. I gotta have this. And she go, 69 cents was more than a pastor's, a wife of a Lutheran pastor is going to give her son to buy a kit. But it's like, I see these things. So it was about then that I did say, I think it's about time you give me an allowance. Don't you think? Can I have an allowance? I mean, I'm too young to go to work, I mean, I'm not, we didn't have sweat factories in Oaks, North Dakota, so I couldn't go to work there, So yeah, I said, can I have an allowance? And my parents agreed. And I got an allowance of 25 cents a week. Now, of course, 25 cents a week was a lot more, but so I'm saving my money. And basically I would save my money. And because I had it budgeted for X goes for saving for the model kit, and X goes for a comic book, a DC comic book, and X goes for 1 package of M&M candies, 5 cents, and 5 cents every week goes for the Sunday school contribution. So about every 2 months I could buy a model. Now my range was limited. It happened to be whatever was in the Rexall drug. So I'm starting with plastic kits, and I think the first kit I ever bought was one of the Century Series, American Century Series fighter aircraft. I think it might have been an F-102 Dagger or something like that. I know that the first kit I ever got, which was before I had my allowance, there's a good story on this one, which is I wanted a model. I mean, so I didn't have an allowance. And my mom said, no, you can't have a model. I'm not giving you 16. No, you're not getting a model. She always would, her first thing is say no first, then we'll see. You know, but I keep going. And I go, I really want a model. That looks so cool. I want to make that. And my best friend had an older brother. He was 6 years older than we were. So he's 12 or something. He's got model airplanes hanging from his bedroom. And I go in there and it's like, you know, I want to do that. So I tell him, I said, I want a model. I really want a model. We're not to slot cars yet. It's 1959, okay? You know, no. So, I mean, there are slot cars, but this is not really, okay? Not so much in North America. But so I say, Dad, I really want a model. He says, well, okay, I'll look for a model for you. Okay, I'm going to get you one. Someday. Well, he decides, you know, he's going to surprise. He said, what do you want? I said, I want an F-86 Sabre. Because, of course, that was the American superior jet of the Korean War. Now, I'm asking for something I've seen in an encyclopedia. I've seen the picture. I know the story. It's cool. It's a little outdated, but it's cool. Now, the chances of the Rexall drug having an F-86, there were plenty of F-86 Sabres in hobby stores in America. There were probably 20 kits in this Rexall drug, okay? So anyway, one day, this is my first model. I come downstairs and there is a gift-wrapped model. I mean, package, and I know from the shape it's got to be a model. I open it up. It had wings. It did have wings. It was the Snark surface to air, it was the Snark missile, which was one of the first, it was a 1950s era cruise missile. So it looked like today's cruise missiles. It flew off, rocket powered, wings, tail, no pilot. It's a missile. Well, you know, I built it. So that's the start. And then I start building models. Okay. So now we skip ahead. So, you know, so I'm building models and that's the way it goes. I'm totally, you know, okay. We have a weekly newspaper, John, a weekly newspaper. We have 2 television stations that come from Fargo, 100 miles away on aerial. They're kind of, you know, you don't really, you know, we didn't have AB, we had NBC, CBS, that's it, you know. So, you know, I don't really know about the world of Madison Avenue. I don't know what Revell and I mean, I only know what Rexall drug stocks. And then in 1963, this is a seminal moment in my life. This is right up, I mean, you know, November of that year, of course, was, you know, a day week, November, but in 1963, I do not remember the date, but it had to have been a week after my best friend's birthday. And he says, you got to come over, something special. So I go over, and he and his mom was divorced, which was kind of unusual, you know, in our small, but he and his mom had moved that year in with her mother. So they're living with the grandmother. And the grandmother was, okay, by Oaks, North Dakota standards, fairly well-to-do. She had a nice big house. Well, she bought Terry an Aurora HO track set. And there it is set up on the dining room table. And it's got, you know, the twisty controller, not this one. It's 19, you know, it's got this one. Well, okay, I mean, so I've never done crack cocaine, but I've done Aurora HO, okay? So that's what it was. That's what happened. And like, you know, every weekend, every play date, we are on the dining room table. We are doing, you know, of course, now I'm doing the calculation of what those things cost. That set, I looked it up. That set cost about $20 in 1963, and that is about $170 US in today's dollars. Right. That's not a cheap gift, you know. But I was like, there's no way I'm getting one of those. Didn't mean I wouldn't ask. Right. I asked, you know. I want an HO racing set. I even remember what cars Terry had. XKE Jag, Stingray. I mean, And in my mind, they look gorgeous. Now, when I did a little research and I sent you pictures of those cars, they didn't quite look as gorgeous as I remembered them. Gorgeous. I said, my God, they look like the real cars. They first of all, there wasn't a Stingray within 100 miles of Oaks, North Dakota, and there wasn't an XKE within 500, maybe 1,000. I mean, no way. I mean, this is the prairie. But I saw them, So I said, okay, I've got to have a set. Well, Christmas 1960, no. 1964, no. Now I'm saving my money, but I'm not going to accumulate the money to do, because I still have to buy my models. In 1965, my dad gets a call to a congregation in western Montana, Kalispell, Montana, which is a metropolis of 12,000 people. Now you're smiling, but that's 10 times bigger than the town I'm living in.
Wow.
This congregation was smart about marketing. My dad had turned down call requests. He was getting them right and left. Every year he would get 15 or 20 requests to come move to their parish. And of course, we were terrified, because who wants to leave your hometown? I don't want to move. They sent this package of this town that's 40 miles from Glacier National Park. The Rocky Mountains are looming up. There is this pristine Flathead Lake. I mean, it looks like Switzerland, and it actually does look like Switzerland in July and August. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful town. So, I mean, this is the first time. So I and my brother and my sister, let's move. Now, Dad did not make the decision to move based on what we said, but he felt after 12 years in North Dakota, from a career standpoint, it would be good to make the move. We moved. Okay, now, so that was a transition year in the fall. So Christmas 1965, no slot car set. And I'm going, I didn't know there were 132nd cars, because I had a friend who had an Eldon set. And I sent you, it had a Jaguar D-Type, and I think a Maserati. No, it was a Ferrari maybe. I love the D-Jag. Didn't look very good, but they didn't look right. And the 132nd, it was like a figure 8 set. And so I said, no, I don't want the bigger ones. The bigger ones are crap, because I hadn't seen a good big one, bigger one. I'd only seen these HO, they weren't called AFX yet. There was still Aurora HO. But okay, so I vow in January of 66 that come the end of that year, I am going to have a slot car set if I have to pay for it myself, which I knew I would. So I'm old enough now that summer to hire myself out as mowing lawns and washing cars. And I earned enough that summer to put some away and to say, I'm buying my own Christmas present this year, and I bought an HO set. Wow. So I started, So I start with that. And of course, then we did have a hobby shop. We had a hobby shop in Kalispell. And I'd go in there and walk around. Now this was before Tamiya was in America too much, but I mean, Revell and Monogram, and yes, Aurora HO sets. Okay. So I'm a happy camper, I'm a happy camper as a 7th and 8th grader, and I'm doing this, and I've got this tabletop thing downstairs, and I'm building the world's lousiest scenery. I mean, and I'm customizing my cars with the Aurora customization kit. You put on the bigger wheels with the fatter tires, you change the gear. It was years before I didn't understand why you couldn't paint Aurora cars. The plastic that plastic did not like paint, but it was okay. Put on little decals, and just so happened that my set that I had received came with the most mismatched bunch of cars you could imagine. One was a Ford Mustang, and the other one was a Ford GT40. And I was like, but I mean, I was like, the Mustang, I mean, okay, fine. Ford GT40, I got a Ford GT40. That's why I bought the set, for the Ford GT40. And you didn't know what color car you were going to get. I got one in British Racing Green. Now, to my knowledge, I've sort of looked, I know that the Ford, for as far as I know, the Ford team never raced a GT40.
No, but the Canadian Comstock team did, yeah.
Okay. But this Ford British Racing Green with a white stripe, well, I was already hooked on F1 racing in Europe. I mean, Jim Clark and Graham Hill were my heroes, you know, driving for Lotus and BRM. So a racing car has to be British Racing Green. And so I've got it. So I'm doing this, and I'm a happy camper. I'm happy. This is good, you know? And so I moved from washing cars and mowing lawns to the next step up in the life of a small town kid. Newspaper route. Now I can earn some serious money, you know, $40 a month, you know? So I can actually, you know, okay, start doing stuff. All right. So then we skip ahead and we get to start of my freshman year of high school, first year of high school. And that would have been in the fall of 1967. And I'm 13 years old. And somebody tells me that there's going to be something going on one of our commercial streets at this empty store. A guy, a small businessman, is going to be building a commercial slot car track there. And I go, what's that all about? Now, I mean, you know, somebody from New York or Chicago or LA would be laughing, but, you know, we're still in the sticks here, you know. But I knew there was this stuff, but okay, let's go find out. So sure enough, there's a sort of a meeting that night, and the doors open, and a few minutes later, there's probably 100 boys in there from the ages of 10 up through 18, 19, you know. They're like, what's this? He goes, I'm going to have this track built. Here's what it's going to look like. We're going to be, you know, of course, selling cars here, you know, and, you know, you can rent controllers and blah, blah, blah. You can even rent cars. And I thought, great, I got to have one of those. First of all, what do I want? Well, first of all, I got to go to the newsstand and get some slot car magazines that cater to, like, so I'm reading all this stuff. And then next stop is I go to the hobby shop, Wheaton Cycle and Toy, and say, you going to be getting slot cars? You know, besides the Aurora and Tyco, you know, you going to be getting these things? Because they had, you know, distributor, wholesaler. I said, oh yeah, they'll be coming in. Okay, what do I want? And I decided what I wanted was the Cox Dino Ferrari with the isofulcrum chassis. And that was a little bit of a compromise because it was Cox, as you know, make beautiful, beautiful cars, top of the line cars. And the body was exquisite, sort of a hard styrene injection molded body. But they had it on the isofulcrum chassis, and it had gray foam tires and kind of skinny, hard rubber tires. They also made one that was truer to scale. But I had found a magazine that talked about this thing. I said, I think this car would be pretty fast. You know, I think not only does it look good, but I think it'll be pretty fast, which should compensate for my lousy driving skills. But, you know, it's good. So, you know, sure enough, I put an order in for one. I couldn't get a red one. I ended up with a blue one. That's okay. I took a blue one. They made them in, I don't know if they made them in any other colors, but I got a blue one. Royal baby blue, you know. So anyway, okay, the track opens up. I think it opened up at maybe around, I don't think it was before Christmas time. I think it opened up around January of 1968. So you should be smiling now because it's like, this guy's timing wasn't exactly good, you know. And his business planning to think he's going to make this work in a town of 10,000 people, you know. So anyway, so I start going there. Well, I probably got there about 7, 8, 9 times before it closed 4 months later, when as the market was collapsing and all of this buildup that had been occurring in 66, 67. Well, he never had the cash flow from us kids to make a go of this store, so it closed. But before it closed, one day I found out that while I thought my Cox Dino Ferrari was pretty hot, if a guy who's about 18 or 19 comes in and sets a rusket Porsche Carrera 906 down next to you with its its vacuum form body and sidewinder motor, and God knows what else he did to it. He was doing 2 laps to every one of mine. It's just like, and I'm going, okay. So put them away. So the market collapses. The slot car store, the commercial track closes. Now I'm going to be starting my sophomore year of high school, which is the year I took driver's training. And I'm still building model airplanes. I'm still going downstairs playing my HO set. But then I get my driver's license the following summer. And now, I'm getting to the point, I've got a driver's license. I'm driving a real car. And I have my first steady girlfriend. And if you look at the priorities in life, doing slot cars at 15 or 16 versus, driving a car, even not a very cool car, and having a steady, so that gets all put on hold for about 30 years. Okay. So because from there you go high school, college, grad school, New York City, the Far East, getting married, raising kids. And it's like, I'm working, college was like challenging, but great. But, I've got other things on my mind besides, my slot car stayed downstairs. My models were up on the shelf in my bedroom at home. Somewhere along the line, my mom decided to sell the slot car sets and the slot cars in a garage sale. And while I was somewhat miffed that she didn't consult me, I have to admit I hadn't been playing with them for years. So I don't really remember what happened with the models, which is a shame, which is a real shame. Actually, there is a story, there is a thing that flashes to me sometimes where I remember that I had a ceremonial destruction of many of them, but I don't really want to own up to the fact that I might have done that, because we wouldn't do so. I would, how could you do something that you'd invested so many years of building? Okay, I'm going to make it brief now as we come. So I go overseas, and I'm over in the Far East, and I'm traveling around, and it's exciting. And now 2 kids. We come back to the United States, we bought a home, and I go, well, my son's going to be 5 years old. Do they still make slot cars sets? So we go to Toys R Us. That company was still around then, so this is now 1989. 1989, we go to this Toys R Us. There they are. I think it's called AFX at this point. Does that sound right? Maybe it's Tyco. I don't know which one it was. There's this huge set. And I go, whoa. And actually, as a dollar value, it's a better dollar value than what I paid for my $25 set. When I bought it in 1966. So I go, okay, so I buy it, come home, I put it together in the basement. David, come down here. And I think he raced it 2 or 3 times. He goes, he wasn't interested. Now, I really didn't feel bad about that because it was my passion, not his. And he got into wargaming and Dungeons and Dragons, and he started collecting the little miniatures. And so we then have had now almost 30 years of painting miniatures together, which is helps the hobby because those guys are good with that.
Mhm.
So anyway, you know, go back to the Far East. Come back, get divorced, eventually come out to Montana. And stop thinking about it because I've got a whole new life. And, the last time I remembered slot cars was buying my son a set that he didn't really interested in. So around about 15 years ago, maybe 16, 2004, 2005, I'm here in Helena, Montana. I've been here for about a year. Something goes off in my head. And I go, and you're going to laugh at this because I don't think you ever really left the sport, did you? I mean, the hobby, did you? Have you always, okay. So this goes off in my head. I said, I wonder if they still make slot cars. I said, I wonder what's going on there. But we have this thing called the internet now with browsers. I had never typed that in before. So I put it in. 4 days later, I emerged from the computer. There for literally 4 days I'm there, ODing and going, what the hell? What is this fly? What is this Carrera? What is this Scalect? Now, Scalextrics is older than I am. It is, but I did see the American companies were gone, basically gone. And then there's like, oh, well, I got to, I got to get the gear. I got to get the gear. And all I will say about my acquisition program for the next 2 or 3 years was I made every mistake in the book in terms of acquiring. It would have been better if I'd spent 4 months researching rather than 4 days, because I'd see something, I got to buy that. I got to buy this. I got to buy this, and my modeling skills were pretty rusty, but what I did learn during the next 2 or 3 years, which is, you're not doing this very well, Mark, but there are all these forums out there. So not only is all this stuff out there, there are all these people out here and they're putting up these exquisite cars. Ask them, talk to them, send them a comment, get on send them a message. And I think like, and you have found, the exception to the rule in this hobby, especially I think in the scratch building community, is that the exception to the rule is that there's going to be somebody out there who says, don't bother you. No, people are so generous with their time, with their advice. So the stuff that has made me happy as a hobby, since some of the wrong avenues I went down in terms of expenditures, is all due to people, many of whom to this day I have not met face to face, but I've been friends with, with folks, everything I know that I can do pretty good, I learned, with the help and assistance, begging, borrowing, not stealing. They knew I was, but with their permission. Now, how do you do that? How do I make this better? Where did you get that? And they'll go, I'll make one of those for you. And, then you sort of finally you get to the stage where you go, I can pay that back a little bit. Now I'm at I can do one of those. So I can go, I can do it. I can do this. And then the thing that happened that has really absorbed a lot of my time for the last decade, besides the scratch building, is Proxy Racing, because I know if I look at my skills objectively, I can build a pretty good looking car. And, if I weren't being recorded right now, I would say I build a damn good looking car.
No, they look really good, Mark. No, they do look good. Oh yeah.
But I can do, but the best thing in the world is to invite folks, it's like playing tennis. The best thing about playing tennis, play with somebody who's better than you.
Yeah.
Your game will get better. You want to have a proxy race? Everybody I invite is at my level or better, because at the end of the day, when the series is over, the accolades are not going to be, wow, you won that series again, Mark. Nobody could touch you. No, it wasn't that. It was like, man, I've got, you organized a race with 20 of the best looking cars we've ever seen, and everybody had fun.
Right.
And, and then, all these people, many of these people were friends with one another, like the UK group or the Australian group or the Midwest US group. And there's a Canadian group. But one of the things I've had a little bit to do in the last 10 years is getting, I call it the best of the best. Of course, who made the choice? Well, okay, I made the choice. These are the best, And guess what? These are the best, and I get to play with them, So I can facilitate bringing some of those folks together, in terms of Proxy Series, because I know I will never ever have the true artistic skill of some of my heroes and mentors, but I can come close, and I know that, I respect them, and I know we all just have a great time doing this, and so that's what I'm about now. Especially, I've been retired for, good Lord, you've been retired too long. Well, I know I've been retired too long because when I can't remember when it was, 4 years, 4 years. So, yeah, well, what should I be doing? I should be doing this, and in a world of COVID-19, is there anything better than a Proxy Series? You can actually do it. We all sit there for months building our cars, putting up our efforts on a forum, giving each other attaboys, or I think you can get this from so-and-so, or maybe try this, or have you tried this, or let me send you this. And then they come together. And, my rule is this: if I organize the series, I have certain rights, not the right to win the series. All the cars come to me. I get to play with them for a while, and, at the end of the day, I get to send them all back, and it's just a fantastic thing. So, and I get to, I'm very much a specialist like you. I have a real passion for vintage Formula One Grand Prix cars, open wheel cars. I mean, those are the cars where the racing heroes were at the fore when I was at that age of 8, 9, 10, I think, and I'm 10 years old. I think that happens a lot with folks. It's maybe if they came into being hooked on cars as a teenager, then it's the people of that era. For me, my teenager was 70s, but my impressions in terms of the gods who walked the earth were the drivers of this decade of the 60s. And so therefore the cars of the 60s, the movie Grand Prix, I mean, two movies that changed my life in terms of, I will always do these things: the Blue Max and Grand Prix. Okay. And, and I've got some very strong opinions about all the characters in Grand Prix too, which I have.
Do tell. I'd be interested.
Well, okay. Pete Ahrens is a real jerk. Pete. He first of all, if he pulled what he did at Monaco today, he'd be qualified. I mean, he is blocking his teammate. He's in a car that the gear, it's sticking. He won't let him get by. And then when he finally starts to go over, he causes the accident. Not only does he then cause the accident, then he steals the guy's wife while the guy's in the hospital. Pete Ahrens is a jerk.
This has happened kind of in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I know that my real life heroes, a lot of them had clay feet, but Pete Ahrens is a fiction. And I like James Garner as a movie actor.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, hey, at least he didn't get shot in The Great Escape. I mean, I love,
Well, and you know how Garner got the part.
Americans.
Yeah.
He played a Canadian, without a Canadian accent, but he played a Canadian. And actually, if I recall, the thing was, he's an American who goes to fly for the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Correct.
So he get in the action.
That's
so he
right.
got shot down sooner, But,
but you know how Garner got the role, right?
Yeah, but
no, do you know how Garner got the role?
For which one?
For Grand Prix.
Yeah, because Steve McQueen got pissed off and wouldn't take the role. I mean,
to Eddie, what's his name?
was approached.
Yeah, that's right. And they couldn't stand
was-
each other. And then MGM basically told Frankenheimer, if you want the money, you got to use Garner.
Yeah. And Garner turned out to be probably, well, of course, Paul Newman is the all-time movie star who was a very, very, very credible racer. But Garner had talent. I mean, my hero in the movie is poor Brian Bedford, who plays,
Of course. Yep.
Who couldn't drive a lick.
That's right. Well, he got the part because he looked like Jim Clark.
Yeah, and actually in the racing scenes, of course, he had the face mask on because he
was substituted every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He looked like Jim Clark, and he's wearing Jackie Stewart's helmet.
Yeah, I know.
And well, I will always, everybody, this will be debated forever. I think that the two great questions of F1, as far as I'm concerned, is number one is Ayrton Senna really the greatest driver in the world? Mark Huber's answer, no. but and the other one is, so what does BRM British Racing Green really look like? Because we always do that in the scratch building. How do I get that doggone dark green color? But I think Clark, along with Fangio, I mean, I realize they had 24 and 25 victories, but they had them in an era when you had, in Fangio's case, 6 to 9 races a year. Championship.
Yeah, well, Fangio's record of 25 was on, I think, 51 or 52 races.
Yeah, he almost had and Clark did his in
72.
In
72 races, 72 Grand Prix
races.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. Yeah,
right. And those were championship races. Don't forget, they had non-championship races in those days as well.
Oh yeah. And
I was like 2 degrees of separation from Jim Clark. I got to meet Dan Gurney and Sir Jackie Stewart when he was on his book tour.
Mm.
And what I was reminded of was in 1967 at Monza, Jim Clark was driving a Lotus 49, as was Graham Hill. Jim Clark had a flat tire and had to go into the pits. Now, going into the pits in 67 was not like going into the pits now. He lost almost 2 laps. He made up those laps and went into the lead. Lost the lead at the very last turn, which is Parabolica, to which it was at that time the closest finish in Formula One history between it was Jack Brabham and John Surtees, and Surtees won. And when Clark coasted to 3rd place, the Tifosi went mad and rushed to Clark's car. Juan Manuel Fangio was actually in the pits and apparently turned to Colin Chapman and said, "That's the best driver in the world ever."
You won't get any argument from me on that. I think. Yeah, I mean, to me.
Now, that little aside, from what I understand, Clark, it was the only time he ever got mad at Colin Chapman, got out of the car, went to Chapman and said, "Next time, put some bloody petrol in the car." Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. In fact, as I think of the events outside of the hobby that I remember that all reinforced my passions for building models and building slot cars and racing them. I mentioned the 2 movies, one about, because I tended to make aviation static models more, but slot cars was much more, the cars was much more in the slot cars in terms of that. But Blue Max Grand Prix. But to me, then the 2 days that to me were some of the darkest days in my life were in April of 1968. I think it was April 7th, the day. And I found that out on the next day because we got the news the next day. And I go, no. And when I heard it, I couldn't believe it. I said, no, Jim Clark cannot be dead. That's impossible. He doesn't make mistakes. What could have happened? And then the other one, which really was tough, happened when I was in the period I hadn't been following well, I followed Jackie Stewart, you know, so 69, 71, I was cheering him, you know, I was happy that Jackie was winning, but I wasn't building models then. I was in college, you know. Well, 69, I was in high school. 69, but 71 was my first year that I started university. 73, I was in university. So I had other things to do, but then 75 was the year I had graduated from Northwestern, and that November I was in my first year of grad school in Washington, D.C. And again, it was the next day getting the news in late November, November 29th. So would have heard it on the 30th that Graham Hill had died in the airplane crash. And those were really, really awful days, you know, because Graham Hill to me was one of the most underrated drivers. The story on him is, okay, very good, but just a slogger, you know, not really didn't have, now, wait a second. The guy won 2 world championships. He would have won, you know, he would have won a third, as is Clark, you know, he or Clark would have won a third, and, you know, and John Surtees is the luckiest world champion as far as I'm concerned ever, you know.
Yeah, but it was all because of an oil plug, right?
Yeah, oil plug and oil, yeah, for Clark.
Yeah.
And Lorenzo Bandini for Graham.
Right.
Those things don't occur. John Surtees.
But you know what? And Graham Hill still is the only Triple Crown winner, and that's what Alonso's trying to beat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Graham Hill was my favorite, and I just, you know, and he played a pretty good Bob Turner with a speaking role in Grand Prix. Yeah. He you know, he had that charm of Errol Flynn and that sort of that look.
Well, and he was so funny when he'd be interviewed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But he used to take, I mean, he was one of the hardest working drivers of the era, because he said himself he didn't think he had any natural talent.
He did, though.
I mean, he did.
Don't get, you know,
but he used to take,
he had that.
Oh, but he used to take meticulous notes. There's a great sort of, I don't know if it's a YouTube video or not, of Damon going through his father's notebooks going, I never realized my father took these, like, air pressures, spring rates. He would draw diagrams of the track and areas of the track to watch out for. Amazing, amazing. Just attention to detail.
Yeah. But, you know, see, that's the thing in terms of legends about how people get typed, because people talk about Senna as being just like this natural, gifted, which he was extremely talented. He also would be in the garage at 3 a.m. with the mechanics tuning the cars. He was an incredibly hard worker.
Very hard work. I mean, not to mention the way that he drove and learned to drive in the wet as a youngster in a go-kart. He would purposefully come home during a rainy day and just go out on the track and practice his wet driving. Yeah. So you're back into slots, and so was there a particular set that caught your eye to get into 132nd at all, or?
Yes. What happened was this. And what it was 132nd was this. I'd done HO. And then I seen the new HO cars, and I said, no, I don't like that. I mean, you know, that's, you know, okay. And 124th, it was like, you know, everybody gets to choose their own hobby, but the surviving stuff, you know, with these things that are going around the track at speed, I mean, they're a blur. And, you know, or worse yet, what my memories of, which was something that's supposed to be a Honda RA300 or a Ferrari 312. And then it's got these fat, goopy tires and these, I go, that's just awful. You know, I mean, it just offends my sense of my uptight, straight-laced sense of, that's just not right. You don't do that. The car should look like the car. Right. So I said, okay, I'm going to look for 132nd. And I had no idea that was the dominant scale in the UK. I'd never talked to anybody. I mean, well, I talked to many people. I'd been to the UK many times, but it wasn't about slot car racing. You know, it was about banking, you know. But so, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, look at this stuff. And then, you know, you find this community of scratch builders. And now in Germany, they do some just mouth dropping stuff in 124.
Right.
But 132 seemed to be just the perfect scale for level of detail. You could build this exquisite car and it would look like a, you know, it could sit on your desk and look beautiful, but you could also really have fun with it. So to me, and then I said, oh, there's stuff out there. You know, there are these specialty makers. So, you know, the Sherlock Holmes in me is going, how do I find them? Where are they? Who are they? I do know this, John, that my theory is that to be a truly preeminent scratch builder who focuses on 60s, 70s racing cars and to be British, your name has to be David. Okay, that really helps, because 4 of the people I know who are sort of at the pantheon of scratch building, they're all named David. So that's, you know, I'd like to think that's why I named my son David, but he got named before I met any of these guys. But, you know, I mean, it's, you know, so it helps. You know, I've been thinking about changing my name to David. It's just be real hard with the records and stuff and, you know, the pension stuff. Yes, I'm just not going to do it. But, you know, but yeah, and so that's been a really big deal. So
Cool. So you, did you buy, what was the first set you bought once you got back in?
The first thing I bought, okay, I actually have it.
Oh.
No, I don't have it here.
Oh, sorry.
In one of those, I think I sent you a picture of those stacked up boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, it's in there. You know, it was an MRRC Airfix MRRC P261.
Okay. Yeah.
The BRM. Now, so what it looked like, because can you say, let's see, can you say the word repop? This thing, and we're not going to say who was the craftsman on this or who sells them today, but this thing is this is basically just a slightly more detailed resin shell of the MRRC
right.
Airfix, and it came with the Clubman chassis. It had the steerable wheels, and I built that thing, or I actually bought it on eBay as a kit, it was open, but it hadn't been built, assembled it, made every mistake in the book about painting, every mistake. And then I did something even more embarrassing. I posted a picture of my build on Slot Car Illustrated, you know. But you know how nice, you know, then that's when I discovered the quality of grace, which was, I didn't get really any comments, but nobody actually said, I can't believe this guy put this picture.
No, it's not that bad. Look,
Nice.
No, I'm sure it's fine.
Well, you know, so, but, you know, so these days, you know, this basically served now, you know, as this is served as experimenting with shades of BRM green. And then this was my little experiment of which decal was the proper size for a build, you know. So this is a mule, but it was never going to be a future kit because I know this is my rivet counting. This is not the right size.
Right.
This car is not built to scale. It's off. However, bear with me. Okay, here comes Lewis Black. Am I going to do my this? Okay. Do you recognize this, John? Do you recognize?
Oh, that looks like is it a Matra?
Yes, that is well, that's open to debate, but it's supposed to be. It's a Matra Cosworth, the MS-10. Okay. this thing back in the, let's see, would have been 69, 70, 71 when Airfix came out with it, was this size. This is a repop too. I'm not going to say who sells it. I'm not going to say who was the, who made the master, who put in beautiful little detail. This thing is 1/28 scale.
Yeah.
This thing is as wide as a Mack truck. I mean, what makes this thing worse, in my opinion, is that the length of the car is actually right. The wheelbase is correct, but the height and the width are just outrageous. Now, when Monogram made its Lotus 33 and its Ferrari 158, they had to compromise to get the Tiger motor in there. There's no excuse for this. There's no excuse. There's no excuse, you know? This has to stop. This is an affront to every rivet counter, all 12 of us in North America, and all 24 of us in the UK, and the 4 in Australia. This is an affront. I did prime it.
I see that.
And I know that this is beyond hope because I bought an original one of these on eBay, the Airfix one.
Right.
And I said, I can fix that. I'll slice it down this way, take out a center, and put it together. You can do that, but the proportions are all wrong.
Yeah.
All wrong. And besides that, okay, so that is a 7 or 8 or 9 liter Cosworth Ford. That's the size of how big. This is about a 700 cubic inch Ford Cosworth V8. Now this cannot pass. This cannot stand, man. You know, this cannot stand. So, but I brought that just because I had to, you know. So, I mean, this thing makes my BRM P83, which was a big car, and a little bit of a 2 years looks svelte compared, because this thing is just off. So, which is why when I write up my proxy rules, you know, I only give a 1.5 millimeter allowance for scale. This thing is off by over 3 millimeters in width and 2 millimeters in height. So, I think I've gone on long about that. You can edit most of that, right?
No, it's brilliant. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's you know, in the beginning of model building, there was something called box scale, and these are almost like motor scale for slot cars.
But you know, see, I give a pass to this one. This is the Super Shells vintage P261, the 1964 car, and it's a little bit wide. And they molded the nose just like the Cox model because the blueprint that appeared in the Model Car magazine was wrong. There was never a P261 that looked like that. I've got the books, you know, I've got Doug Nye's books, picture of every, no. But I give it a pass because the wheelbase is right. It's pretty close. You can make it look like a good car. So that's fine. And it was made in, you know. But if you want to build a BRPM 261, and I'm sorry, this is reflecting, I should have primed it. Oh, boy, sorry about that.
No, it's okay, it's good.
Okay, this is made, of course, by one of those Daves, you know, over in the UK. Right. This is a Dave Jones BRM P261. I take, what do I want to call it? I take bystander credit for this car because I had nothing to do with its construction other than begging Dave Jones to build one. And he said, I'll do that. And he then produced the finest 1/32 scale I've had, you know. And then, so what can you do with one of these? So this is the 64 with the low exhaust, right, the injection, you know, the original V8. So the most successful, along with the 578, the two great BRMs of the era, because this car and these chassis raced from 64 through 68. They raced from 64 through 67 as factory, as works teams, but another year in private hands. So what you can do with one of these, because I always say, you want to be a good scratch builder, you got to get good parts from people who really know what they're doing. So what you can do, if you try hard, spend enough time, is then you make one of these. So this is the same car, but I've converted it to a center exhaust, and then I put the injection trumpets out through the side. And of course, it's not got the skinnier, it's got the bigger 15-inch wheels that were used from because this car was raced by Jackie Stewart at the 67 French Grand Prix. And originally he was scheduled to race one of the H16 cars, but it was going like a dog around the small circuit, the Bugatti circuit at Le Mans. And Owen Racing basically had a Lend-Lease program with Parnell, which was, if we want our car back, we get it back for the race. So Chris Irwin, who was supposed to drive this car, found out he wasn't going to be, and Jackie drove this car. It also had a shortened nose, like a Monaco car. So I did all of that. And I've taken the screws out of the body mounts, so I could.
Oh yeah, let's see it. Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, perfect. Oh,
I basically replicated a little bit of the monocoque chassis in the inside, all based on the fact that while you'll never see this from the race view, if you're judging it in concourse, and if you go up and look down through the cockpit, you can actually see what appears to be the top of the monocoque back there. And I put those in.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. But basically what it just takes is a lot of, this is what I call, Jackie Stewart's driving this car, but I would call this the Mark Huber, Graham Hill approach to model building. Keep slogging, and make sure you've got good equipment. So I slogged and slogged, because this was the fourth one I built. I got it pretty close where I wanted to have. I did 3 that you're not seeing, okay? And you never will. But this one you did see. And the good equipment is, it started with an immaculate body shell from Dave Jones out of Blackpool, England. So.
Absolutely lovely, Mark. That's a great, great car. Now, is that the one that you've got on your channel going around your track?
No. I've got the 2 bills that are going to be for the upcoming Proxy, the COVID-19. We're all doing time trials Proxy. So one of them is this one. And again, this one is its predecessor. This is the P61. And this one started out life as an old Super Shells. But again, the cowling, the back cowling has been completely remodeled. The nose has been remodeled to emulate the P61. And then, it's on the skinny 15-inch, and this is the only one that I didn't, because the underneath is a fairly conventional motor chassis.
Your soldering is really, really good.
Now, I want to tell you about something about soldering. I want to have a confession to make. You know how golfers, when they, pro golfers, when they start to get a bit older, they talk about they get on the green and they have the yips, when they're trying to putt, they have the yips. I've got the soldering yips. So I watch when you're doing one of your bills, and I'm going, I know he's not editing that. He goes in there, his hand isn't shaking. He just goes in there, boop, everything goes. And you don't want to have the yips when you're soldering. So, but part of it's my own fault, because I build chassis years before I ever do the
bodies?
Yeah. So the thing is, because I said, I'm going to make 1960. They've all got a wheelbase of X. So, you make your certain sizes. But if you don't keep your hand in the game of soldering, just like if you don't paint continuously, your skills atrophy. So, plus, you know, steel wool brush and detergent, you got to clean them.
Yeah.
But, but no, I mean, I look at somebody, there's a pretty famous builder. I'm trying to remember if he's out of Ontario or
Oh, Chris Walker.
Walker. I mean, his things look like Swiss watches.
Yeah.
And I have the feeling they look like Swiss watches the moment he lays the iron down. I mean, they are just, it's like, oh crap.
I can tell you, category. I know Chris, and he spends a lot of time polishing.
Yeah, well, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're really gorgeous. But his builds are just, they're works of art.
They're out of this world. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one that you made, the one you saw, and I've mentioned this. It only took me. I started this car. I started this car 10 years ago.
Wow. Well, now that one I did see. I think
You did see
video and online. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, the attention to detail with the cockpit is just superb.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was intrigued because what inspired this car. Got to hold it up there.
Yeah.
What inspired this car. And now I'll take off I took the body mount out, so I'm gonna get it off.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful.
Oops.
Look at that. Wow. Oh, you got the engine. Oh man, beautiful.
Yeah. So what inspired this one, and of course it's asymmetrical because they didn't take off the body panels, they left the center one on the left-hand side.
Right.
So pretty much everybody knows who follows the sport from the 60s because he won the race, is that Sterling Moss won the 61 Monaco and they'd taken the body panels off. And anybody who knows anything about scratch building slot cars knows that Penelope Pitlane made a beautiful little model and you can do that. And when I saw that, I said, holy cow, the challenge of building an open-sided car, although they faked it a little bit,
right?
But that's okay. But I said, and then of course, two of my mentors, two of the people who have helped me all through the years, they both did Penelope Pitlane one better, and they made that model, but truly open-sided. And of course, then they used, instead of using the PSR brass nickel chassis, they used the little FF030 motor. So you can actually get a driver figure in that small wheelbase. So I said, well, okay, I'm never going to be able to build a car that's even close to what Chris Wright or David Lawson did. There's no way. They did it. Been there. So it's like, you gotta, land somewhere else. And then one day I see in the picture book, pictures of the 61 French Grand Prix later on in the season. And they had taken the body paneling off of the Lotus 21s that Innes Ireland and Jim Clark were driving. And I said, I'll do it with that. And of course, Dave Jones makes an exquisite Lotus 21 shell. Mm-hmm. So jump ahead. That car started out in concept with the core chassis is piano wire or steel wire, brass plates. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
And then I put some covering in the middle, Yep. But first concept was, okay, I'm going to recreate the space frame on the side, and I want to keep it light, so I'll use plastic rod, evergreen, very thin plastic rod. So I did that. But I couldn't get it thin enough to really be right, and it just looked too thick. So after having that for a few, having it done, I said, So I said, no, it's got to be piano wire. So I did that, put it up. But then I didn't finish it And I didn't really realize I had two things. I had a bad motor in there, and I had it geared wrong. And once you have the motor in that car, and you've got you've got the ladder frame, you can't just unscrew the motor, because I've actually got the space frame on the side, although it's not load bearing. I've got it soldered to the sides of the motor, so the motor's in there. Which means if I get the motor out, I've got to rebuild the car. So I began to rebuild the car. But I said, this was after it being in a bin for 8 years. It just sat there, unfinished. I mean, it was 90% done. The 90% done went down to about 10% done as I reworked it, because it's been about 90% replaced. And the only thing that was going to give me incentive to do that was to say, well, I guess my next Proxy series that I'm going to run has to be for half-tonners, and that'll be one of my entries. And if I commit to doing that, I gotta finish it. So there you go.
That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, no, it's
thank you.
Oh,
so it has a serious racing flaw, which it's not a flaw. It's just a condition one has to accept when you gear a Solarbotics motor a certain way. There are no brakes. This car, you have to learn the blip and glide method of driving. Now, that becomes somewhat problematic in Proxy Racing, because I know what I have to do.
right.
You're going to have new drivers every time. So we're not expecting this thing to be high in the standings, But I think it's oops, got to get it down. Get it down. Here we go. I expect it to. I expect it to hold its own in the beauty parade.
I was going to say, if it doesn't win the concours, my goodness.
Well, bear in mind, there are people who have every ignition coil, every fuel injection. I mean, it's just unreal. So what got me back in, I took a break in all of this for about I said I got back into this in 2005, but from 2015 to 2019, I really wasn't building too much. And then I got invited into a Proxy series in the UK. And that is what prompted me to build.
Oh.
And this car, this Proxy series had very standardized rules, which was spec chassis, the PSR brass nickel chassis,
Yep.
and a spec motor. But this car was the classic. It wins the race in qualifying, and then something just doesn't go right on Sunday, because there were 4 races, and this car, in the 4 races on Saturday qualifying, I was on the pole in one race, and I qualified second. My car qualified second in 2 of the other races. And in the other race, the 4th race, it qualified 7th or 8th. There were 19 cars in the series. Let's just put it this way. My 4 finishes were not 1, 2, 2, 7. Something always happened in the race. So,
well, what was it? Something in the car, or was it something that in the driver?
It's usually how do I say this? In my Proxy series, if that happens, it's going to be something that's in the car. It is, because I'm not kumbaya when it comes to picking my race hosts or how they pick their drivers. It's got to be, these people do not have to be world-class drivers, but they have to understand to be able to get the feel of a car. And the idea is not to race it like they stole it. The idea is to race it in complete laps. So if a car is inconsistent in my Proxy series, I'm going to blame the car, which comes back to the builder. Now, my car qualified fast, did not finish. It sort of finished each race in the middle of the pack or lower. It never finished. But so I can conclude that, in a 1 minute heat to get a fastest time, that with usually the person qualifying the car being the guy who owns the home track, that's going to be different than the drivers come in and they're driving 19 different cars in the afternoon. So I get that. But there can be a case where people don't always drive, basically they don't always drive in the best way. And so you can have a lot of varied results with certain races. I think this car was fast. It was fast, and with a driver on his home track, it could hold its own against the best in the UK. But in a Proxy series, I'm sure it could not have been the best handling car, because had it been, it would have placed more consistently with the qualifying times, But that's okay. It looked good. I had fun.
Looks great.
And that is a Super Shells. That is a Super Shells Ferrari, which sits on top of the Model Car Magazine blueprint. This looks like the early 64 158. Later on in the season, they put scoops along the side of the nose,
right,
and the back cowling was a little bit different, the engine cowling. But this is supposed to be a replica of the car that Surtees drove early in the season at the Dutch Grand Prix. And that's how I modeled it. So, yeah, that's one thing we rivet counters do. We don't just pick a car.
It has
a car at a certain race.
Well, and but you know what? That's the way it should be, because in Formula One, even in the 60s, the cars changed from race to race.
Yeah, they sure did. Yeah. And that's something, I understood when I bought do you have the Doug Nye books, the BRM saga, that's the trilogy?
I don't. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lot of Lotus books, actually.
Yeah. There are 3 books like this by Doug Nye.
Wow.
Gives you an appreciation. Yeah. So you know every chat, but the P261s and the 578s, they changed race to race. The wheelbase stayed the same. But, the body shape, they put a scoop in here. They changed the suspension point. They route, something over here differently. The mesh grills over the injection trumpets or not. Cutting a hole in the, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
It's not just cutting the nose off at Monaco. There's all sorts of stuff going on with these cars. So I suspect that people who are aficionados of modern F1 can actually distinguish those cars. If they were all painted black with no, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But I know that people who follow F1 religiously probably could, because I know they'd probably say the same thing. Well, if you take a starting grid from 1965 and you remove all of the stripes and paint everything black, get the drivers, you couldn't tell them apart. Well, that's not true. I could, you could,
yeah.
But because that's the era. Now, you mentioned something about the 67 Italian Grand Prix, right? Mm-hmm. The one that Surtees just edged out Brabham, right, with Clark coming in third.
Yep.
Okay. You spoke about it like you were there, but that had to be before you were born. So,
no, I'm old. In fact, I remember when Jim lost his life, because I was 5. Yeah. And I have an older brother who's 11 years older than I am, and he was crying, and I asked him why. He said the best driver in the world was just killed.
But
I remember that.
You would have been, okay. I was at, junior high school age when the sport, the hobby, peaked and then collapsed in the US. I imagine in Canada it was somewhat similar.
Yeah, I rode the crash because what happened was,
But you would have been like 5 or 6 years old, right?
yeah, my parents weren't, we weren't very affluent. So the first slot car set I got was a used Eldon's electronic set that never worked as intended.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was brand new. But yeah, we had, we didn't buy a lot of things new.
Yeah. Well, ours was go buy it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really when I seriously got into it. I would say, yeah, I guess when we bought our house around 93, 94, when the resurgence started. And luckily I had kept my old Eldon track, which was horrific by comparison, but it was all I had. And what was really funny was that we would have, we always had all our friends over for New Year's, and I set up the track and everybody got into it. It was really kind of neat. And then just snowballed from there. And then I also raced 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, my wife would have preferred
Definitely demonstrates that you've got a screw loose somewhere.
I have to say,
that's dangerous, man.
Well, you know
Would
what?
you do?
I used to
sport open wheeler or sports car?
Yeah, Formula 2000. Yep.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Wow. So when's the next Proxy that you're going to be
well, it will
organizing?
It will kick off in January.
So it is January, yeah.
Yeah, January. As long as United Parcel Service is operating as they have been, it will work. The cars are due at my place in December. And so actually it will kick off in December. They will start moving. They will make their way to the Midwest in January, then out to the East Coast, then back to the Midwest, and then back to me. So it'll be various spots from North America and Europe to cars coming to Montana, then off to Indiana, then to Pennsylvania and Northern Virginia, then to Ohio, and then back to me.
So you have quite the I guess, circuit that you've got going here.
Yeah, last year, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say last year, because actually it's just a whole different world with what's gone on. The first quarter of this year, we did the same. Last December, the cars came to me, and I basically used the Proxy series as an opportunity to visit my son and my daughter-in-law in Chicago. I rented a car and I drove over to Fort Wayne, Indiana. I hooked up with Ken Wainert there, and we did the first race there. I stayed with him a couple of days. I went back to Chicago, dropped off the car. I flew to Baltimore, hooked up with Alan Schwartz, who'd been my friend for 10 years, but we'd never met. Spent 3 days with him, and then we went up to Pennsylvania, did a race there. Then we left the cars in Pennsylvania. Another race was down in Pennsylvania. Then the cars were shipped over to Ohio. Then the cars were shipped from Ohio back to me. And then I did my race in Montana, totaled up all the results, took some pictures, and got the cars off just before everything got shut down. So.
Now, the track that you assembled that's on your videos, is that the track that you used for your?
That was the track I used. That is that's a Ninko track. That is about a third of the track that I own, but it's all I've got space for. I've got track. Did you ever see videos of Jay Hardy's Ninko track, home track from Georgia?
I don't think so.
You remember the name Jay Hardy? He was participant in the VRAA, the vintage race across.
Oh, wait a minute. Yes. Okay.
When he got out of, I bought all of his track, and his track was 60 plus feet of 4-lane. And I've got, about 45, 50 feet of 2 lanes set up. We do, 3 races will be on plastic and 3 races on routed track. There'll be 6 races this year. Last year there were 5. So,
Oh, geez, that's fantastic. Holy cow. Now, how do you like the Ninko track?
I'm used to it because that's what I, it's grippy because it's got a little bit of a pebbly surface.
Right.
So, and frankly, anything that helps my car stay on the track is a plus. So I'm used to it.
That's cool.
I think Carrera track fans look somewhat askance at Ninko track. I'm not, but that's what Jay had, and he was selling it, and it seemed like a good comp. It actually sort of seemed like the middle road between Scalextrics on one side and Carrera on the other. I didn't want to get the Scalextrics because it's a little bit narrower. I would have liked to get the Carrera, but it was a little bit bigger. It's a lot more expensive. Carrera is a beautiful track, So, one thing that I don't have any skill in is carpentry at all. So the likelihood of me ever having a routed track is none. I'm of the opinion now as an old man that what we call shop in America, should be a mandatory course for all high school students. When I went to high school, if you were going to university, you didn't take shop. So, you just didn't. You took other courses. Well, my father was a minister and he didn't putter around. So everything I learned, about putting two pieces of anything together, I learned on my work table we didn't have, a workspace. Dad didn't do any of that stuff. Now, working on a ranch for 3 years, I did learn some auto mechanics, because in high school years. So in fact, the first vehicle I ever drove was a Ford. The truck was older than I was, in terms of when it was built. And it had a non-synchro mesh
Gearbox.
Gear shift. So I had to learn, I was 14 years old, learning on this big truck to drive, illegally, of course, but on the country roads with double clutching and all that stuff. So, but I never, and I learned some basics of auto mechanics, but carpentry, way over my pay grade. Electrical work is confined to soldering lead wires onto motors. That's it.
Well, now are you planning to put some of the racing on your channel though? Because that would be great.
If people, the pictures pictures. If people take videos, they will. Yeah, I don't consider my channel a channel. My channel is just there so that my iPhone doesn't get clogged up with videos. Because basically, it's like, okay, I take it, and it's like, well, I can park it over on YouTube. You saw my production quality.
No, but that's fine. As long as you're getting something up.
Myself.
Yeah.
I just do it for myself. It's like, okay, and then, so, I don't think until you looked at them I had any views.
But it's a great.
Yeah, because I wanted to share those with you because, I was following your channel and say, I figured, it's the simplest way is like, I'll just send you a link to the gallery, and here's the, whatever the link is, because I was testing the car. Christina gave me, after the last couple where she watched me trying to balance the iPhone, and then I'm going, and as you heard, this isn't working very well. So the other day she had a little present for me and it was an iPhone tripod. So, oh, okay, cool. But, production quality is non-existent,
Oh,
I look at like, popping in music and up comes, I don't know how that stuff works. I know Excel, I know PowerPoint, I do not know video editing and I don't want to learn.
Okay, well that's it. If you don't want to learn, that's okay. But
I don't want to learn. No, I do. My goal is to, paint a driver figure that people will go, I got to have that, give me that, so that's my goal.
Well, I saw what you were doing with the washes
Mm.
that you sent me some pictures, and it's starting to look really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm experimenting. I mean, it would be helpful, probably, if I'd write some of the steps down, like I used this and this and this, because I'm trying different things each time. With Jack Brabham, I decided, they called him Black Jack for a number of reasons. But I think the permanent 5 o'clock shadow and the dark black hair had a bit to do with it, a little bit.
Yeah, that and throwing gravel up with his.
Yeah, and throwing gravel. It is, yeah. And so I said, I'll bet, given his complexion and look, let me start with black primer and see how it works. And this isn't going to come out well at all through video, but I did some more on it.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah, and this is going to probably look horrific on Zoom.
No, right up to the camera. Let's see.
Let's see.
Oh, get it nice and close, closer. A little higher. Yeah, a little. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know where the other.
No, that's perfect. Right there. Perfect. Yeah, I can see that.
I can send you some pictures, and I've sent you some galleries. So, since you are a master video editor, you can decide whatever you like.
We'll throw some stuff up over my face. It'll be perfect.
Well, I know you throw it up over my face. I'm looking here, and I'm going to say, I think whoever views this is going to say, it would have been better if Mark didn't use the bronzer on his face. I swear.
No, Mark, you're talking to a guy
here. You see, there are no white circles around my face. It's high blood pressure, John. That's what hypertension.
No, those figures are doing really well, and it looks like you actually started to highlight the high parts of the face.
I highlighted the high parts, and if you could see this, because this doesn't judge. The photos are a little better, but
okay. Well, you send me the photos. I'll put them in. No.
Yeah, the Brabham without the goggles, I'm really pleased with. When you've got goggles and a visor, you don't have that much of the face to work with.
Right.
You really don't. So, but, I mean, I try to keep my hand in. Chris Wright told me something when I was starting. He was one of my mentors. And he was actually one of the people he had built an exquisite Ferrari 1512, jewel-like. And I said, I cannot believe that, Tell me everything you know. Everything. I will learn, master, I was like Mark Hamill to his Yoda, Luke Skywalker to his Yoda, although I never managed to do soldering blindfolded, but he told me once something that I thought really made sense. He says, if you do a good job on a scratch-built car, a good job. I mean, it's got to be, clean, presentable. But he said, if you nail the detailing, especially the cockpit and the driver, I mean, if you can take that to a different level, which he does all the time, by the way, okay, he said that people will go ooh and ah. One of the reasons being, a lot of people don't really spend that much time on that, whether they're the race tuners or they want to have the beautiful gloss finish, or they're the weatherers, they don't spend as much. And for me, it's like, it's all, hey, I'm pretty sure these cars will not go around the track without I haven't tested them, but I think they only work with a driver in them. And a good looking driver helps. I mean, it's all I got. So that's what I work on, so I spent, and that's why I watch wargaming or miniature painting videos nonstop. I mean, the people who put those out, I mean, they're like little Rembrandts. They talk about opacity and about wet bleeding and about highlighting and wet blending. And I mean, and they're not being pretentious. They're really, and about light reflection. And I'm going, but trying to absorb a little bit with the, now they're dealing with fantasy figures who generally, except for the of course, the noted Warhammer Space Marines who just basically have bare heads. So you get a big advantage, in in painting those figures. But you try to adapt, because I've also noticed that the static modelers. Have you watched Plasmo's channel?
Mm-hmm.
The guy, he builds these exquisite planes, mostly planes. Once in a while, some tanks. He never puts the pilot in. Now the guy could paint. He could paint the white reflection on the black pupil, or inside a 1/3. He could do that, but he does. They don't really seem to care about the figures that much, and yet their vehicles, whether they're planes or tanks, when they're photographed, you would swear that it's a photograph from an aviation museum. They're that good, So I watch Warham, Squidmar from Sweden, and Miniac from Minnesota. Those channels, these guys are amazing, and so I've learned a lot. Now, if I could just remember to write it down,
Well, that's it. That's the advantage of just putting up your iPhone while you're working and while you're mixing paint, and that way you won't have to remember, and then just keep the file.
I'm embarrassed to admit that I never thought of that. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I gotta, maybe, I don't know how long we've been on. How long have we been on?
Oh, it's digital. We got all the time in the world.
Well, I know, but that just makes your job of cutting this down to something usable.
No problem.
Have you picked up one of these?
Oh, is that the Scalextric 25?
This is the Scalextric Lotus 25?
I have not yet. No, I have to.
Okay, so two things. First of all, I got to give kudos to Scalextrics for making a scale perfect Lotus 25.
Nice.
This thing is exquisite. Now, remember my Lewis Black rant about that Matra. How they could put that driver figure in there is beyond me. I mean, they used the stock driver figure they've been using. I mean, so it's wrong in so many ways, it's offensive. However, there is a solution to that. So the solution is you get one of these, you happen to have a spare. Once upon a time, Scalextric used to sell spare parts. I wish they still did. So this thing is a spare body, which will fit right in. Where'd he go? There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
And in now you've got the real Jim Clark in his 1962 helmet. So shortly, this guy will be replacing this counterfeit. And then I will pop the magnet out, because this thing goes like blazes, but that's not real driving. So
Well, I was going to say, the motor is a bit fast for the car, is it not?
It is. Yeah, the motor. Oh, it is fast. So I mean, but with no respect to magnet racing. So whatever. I mean, you put this on and then you just go to hold the throttle down on my track and just watch it blur around. But that's not, So yeah, it would be. You got to do some balancing and stuff, but it would be better with a lower motor.
Or I guess turning the voltage down on your track.
Turning the voltage down, yeah. So right now, this is my next F1 project here. Now, no, Jim Clark never drove this Ferrari, but I popped him in there because he was handy. I just dropped him in now. This will be driven by John Surtees, But I haven't got. But I've been working on the Jim Clark figure, and he fits so nicely. So now, this is the 63.
Hold it up just a wee bit more. There you go. Yeah, perfect.
This is the 63, 15663.
Right.
So it's a space frame, but this is John Surtees won his first Grand Prix in this car, the 1963 German Grand Prix. This is actually modeled to look like the car that he raced at Monaco. So this is the chassis it's on, and this is just a very simple brass and steel. It's got a motor that I'm sure you probably have some.
Oh yeah.
Heard of, the Al Penrose BWA, 14,000 RPM. this car, this chassis right now, as configured with this thing on it. Of course, I've got, finish it. I haven't done the suspension detail. But right now, this car blows the socks off of my 2 proxy entries. So you might say, what am I doing wrong? Well, what I did wrong was I'm a real stickler for having a diverse field of cars. So I set a limit on how many cars can come from each team. Well, the Ferrari quote is full. So even though it's my race and my sandbox, I can't kick somebody out to put this car in.
Now that is,
This will be next year. Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm sure that body turned out really nicely.
This body, the only thing I get credit for is making a few trims and painting it. This body was carved and molded by David Lawson.
Oh, wow. Well, he does amazing work.
Yeah. And he gifted me this body, oh golly, 5-6 years ago. And I said, I'm going to build it. I'm going to build it. I'm going to build it. I'll build one. I'm going to use it. And then I kept putting it off, and this body would have been the Ferrari I would have entered in the UK Proxy a year ago. It did not fit right on the spec chassis. It was hanging up on the brass nickel chassis along the side. And then I had to cut it a little bit on the sills here to get it.
Yeah.
And then I realized if I cut it anymore, it would just ruin the look. So I stopped for once in my life, I stopped before I ruined something. So I said, but it fits perfectly on this one.
Yeah.
And also on this one. The problem with that PSR chassis, with that long drive shaft, the motor comes almost all the way through the cockpit. So you really have to do a contortion on your driver. But with this one, you can drop this guy in, and you got a full body driver figure on top of an FF050. And Penrose's motor is a good example that it's not all about RPM.
No, in fact, yeah, it's
for a little motor that its relative torque and brakes are so good. So, yeah.
No,
so
that's gorgeous.
So, yeah, that's one thing though. Ferrari Red, you probably have noticed with the cars I've shown you, it helps to build cars that don't have stripes. Single color cars, there's a reason Mark likes single color cars. You don't have to deal with the damn stripe. So whether it's Ferrari Red or Lotus Green, now it's true, the later Lotuses have the yellow stripe, but I didn't build this one, But my Lotus 21 was 2 years before they introduced because they brought the yellow stripe in the middle of '63, after their Indy experience, Hey, I have a question for you. You'd know the answer. You're probably the one person I know who probably knows this answer cold, and I've never found it. I looked for it on the internet. So why is it that static model builders after World War II basically had a preferred scale for cars of 125, and the commercial racing large size was 124? Why the difference between, why 124 for slot cars, but 125 was used for?
You know what? I don't know. I often thought it was because of the way the model industry evolved. So for example, like Johan, I believe, was the first model company to do promos for the automotive industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought those were done in 125th. But
okay.
I honestly don't know why there was a bit of a diversion to 124th. I don't know if it was a...
I always assumed that 124 was adopted because it was twice as big as 148, But then in the car world, you have 120, you have 124, 125, and 143. But in the airplane world, you have 148, and then you have 132, and then, and
Yeah,
you don't
172nd, 144.
really have 125. You don't really have 124 in the aviation.
Yeah, and I know there were some scale wars, especially in the armor world, where
Yeah,
132nd was supposed to be the standard, and then it was really the Japanese companies that came out at 135.
35. Yeah.
To fit the motors that they had to motorize their tanks.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then it sort of got adopted by everybody for 135th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was any real logic to it, to be honest with you. It was probably business reasons more than logic.
Yeah, maybe Max knows the answer. Although Max, his forte is really the static model. It seemed when I watched your conversation that he was owning up that what he really liked about his HO slot car set was letting them fly off. Oh yeah, boom. Oh, and no Max, no.
Only a pilot would drive like that.
Yeah, it's a pilot. Yeah, a test pilot. Yeah. He's the Chuck Yeager of the HO world. Yeah, Chuck was a good test pilot.
Yeah, Chuck was. Yeah, he was. Yeah. No. Oh, that's too funny. Oh man. Well, listen. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate. We're going to do it again.
Okay.
Especially
sure,
especially closer to your proxy and stuff, and see the cars that come in. And absolutely, I think it'd be a great idea.
Well, maybe it would be better if we wait about 10 years, because it takes me about that long to put in a new set of. I'll have 5 or 6 more cars built by that time.
Oh no, it'd be perfect to take a tour of the track and show what you're doing, and maybe update the drivers who have entered your proxy.
Yeah, I will keep you informed of that stuff going on. I actually, do you know Stuart Hardy?
I don't.
23. He's out of Montreal, and I realize I'm not an ignorant American. I do realize that Montreal and Toronto are not 5 minutes apart. I do know that, but Stuart's pretty big in the scale model building business, and so when I was launching this, he sent me a note, an email, something to the effect of he said, okay, what did I do and when did I do it to really piss you off to, not be invited to be a race host? Ooh. And I said, it's really simple. The logistics, even before COVID-19, of getting cars across Canada, it's not, as much as I would love to send cars up, and there are plenty of people up there who I would trust these beautiful little cars with, they get hung up. It takes me the last time I ordered something from Canada, 5 weeks, and that was pre-COVID-19. I don't know what. I don't know if our immigration or our customs authorities suddenly decided that small packages coming from Toronto must be suspect. Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for the conversation.
My pleasure. It was fantastic.
And also, thank you for the excuse to buy the first bottle of Canadian that I'd purchased in about 30 years.
So, 30 years?
I told you. Before we started.
Yeah. That's well, gee whiz. I hope it's not habit forming.
I don't think so, because I also bought a bottle of scotch. And once a Scotch snob, always a Scotch snob. Once a single malt, and they're the worst. Notice how I said there. Correction. We're the worst. We are the worst. It's like, yeah, but is it from Ile? No. Okay, well then it doesn't count. Does it have a proper peaty essence? Oh, geez.
All right, thanks again. I'm going to stop recording, and then we can hang on for just a sec.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. Stop. Yeah. Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe.